Now we're going to go pretty close to the source of the budget. That's Dr. Jared Bernstein of the White House Council of Economic Advisors. So, Dr. Bernstein, thank you so much for being with us. Give us your top line. What's the most important thing we should take away from this budget proposal?
I think the most important top line, and I say this as someone who's worked closely with Joe Biden for a long time, is that budgets are statements of values, the administration's values, the president's values, and the budget that we're releasing today sends a clear message of our values around fiscal responsibility, safety and security, both at home and abroad around the world, and the investments needed to continue our equitable, inclusive growth and to build a better America that reaches all the bakers of the pie, not just those at the very top of the scale.
So, Jared, that's a great three-part structure. Let's take it up in that order. Number one, fiscal responsibility. One of the things that you have emphasized, the fact that already the deficit came down in fiscal year 2022, and you're projecting out 10 years for it to come down still further by a substantial amount. At the same time, the debt to GDP ratio goes up over the 10 years, does it not? Is that fiscal responsibility?
Well, first of all, let's focus on the reduction in the deficit this year. I don't want to blow by that because it's the largest decrease on record. $1.3 trillion of deficit reduction projected for FY fiscal year 22. As a share of GDP, by the way, that's a 6.6 percentage point decrease in the budget deficit as a share of the economy. And the impact of the American Rescue Plan on the economy, something you and I have talked a lot about on these segments, the impact on growth, the impact on the labor market, 40-year growth rates that we're posting in terms of the historical speed. That's had a huge impact on that deficit reduction. And yes, over the longer term, over the budget window, the 10-year window, $1 trillion in deficit reduction. Part of that is due to a billionaires minimum tax, which is, I think, deservedly getting a lot of attention, which we can get into. But yes, very important part of the value statement in this budget today.
Those are all very important points, but let me come back to the one I asked, which is still at the end of this budget, if you got everything that's in this,
right.
At the end of this budget, we would be borrowing a bigger portion of our economy than at the beginning.
I think the key thing there is to look at two things. One, what kind of investments are you making there? Are you making investments on behalf of the American middle class, on behalf of the economy's productive capacity, lowering prescription drug costs, making life more affordable for middle class families, childcare, elder care? Second, look not just at debt to GDP, but look on that same page, which is table S1 for those who are following along at home, where you look at the debt service as a share of GDP. Public finance economists recognize that that is one of the most important variables because it's what it costs the government to service its debt. Now, I know at Bloomberg you're talking to the titans of finance all day, and they will tell you the cost of servicing your debt is crucial when we're looking at this. Those values, by the way, are negative over the next couple of years. They're well below their historical averages. And that, of course, is because interest rates, particularly real interest rates, are not just low, but still negative.
Well, no question, interest rates are really low, no question about it. But that's in part because the Fed has felt that they could get away with that. Right now, we're about to head into a period of higher interest rates. We're not sure how much higher. So how does this budget read against the inflation issue, which, as you know, is on everyone's mind right across the United States of America?
Absolutely. A really important question. So since the Council of Economic Advisors plays a key role in the forecast that underlies the budget, I can give you what I hope is a fulsome answer. Not only do we have inflation forecasts that at the time, which this budget was locked last November, were actually a bit higher than blue chip. So we were looking at what we expected in that regard. We also have an interest rate trajectory that is very much in keeping with what we're seeing, and over the longer term locks in a rate against which these debt service calculations are made. So whether we're talking about debt service or debt as a share of GDP, we're right there with the interest rates that private forecasters believe they see coming. So it's not like we made this budget and the Fed came in and threw everything off. In fact, our longer term interest rates are very much in sync with all the other estimates I've seen.
Jared, you made, I think, a very important point right at the very beginning, which is this is a statement of values, because we know there's a lot of hurdles between now and actually appropriations, but it's a statement of values. And fiscal responsibility is an important value expressed in this budget. At the same time, and I only got a chance to look through your fact sheet briefly here, it looked like all of the reduction in deficit comes from raising income, that is to say, raising taxes. I didn't see a lot of savings in terms of costs.
Well, the president, ever since he was campaigning, talked about the importance of, yes, fiscal responsibility, but at the same time, injecting a much, much needed dose of fairness into the tax code. And that, I think, is the way forward. And that's what this budget underscores. Deficit reduction correctly in this budget asks billionaires to pay their fair share. You know, we have a country where billionaires have paid an 8% effective tax rate on average in recent years. Corporations should pay their fair share, multinational corporations also. All of that is finally here in a tax policy that I think Americans will look at and recognize as fair. Now, when it comes to costs and spending, what matters is what are you spending on? Now, if you're spending on wasteful programs that don't increase the economy's productive capacity, that don't give people a path into the labor force through increasing the availability of childcare and elder care, that don't build out our infrastructure, you're not making spending that's going to boost this economy's future growth rates and its sustainability and inclusivity. In that, those are the values, the economic values of this president, and they are all fulsomely embedded in this budget document.